Well, hello, everybody. Balls to the Wall, episode number 53. My name is Kenny Matthews, and my sidekick, Billy Martin Jr. How the heck are you doing? Happy New Year, all that good stuff. Super Bowl's over. Must mean baseball season's around the corner.
It was, and it was great Super Bowl. I was definitely cheering for the Dallas Texans because their quarterback was born in White House, Texas, played for my alma mater, Texas Tech. His father played for the Texas Rangers, and so I came up with a few reasons why I was cheering for them. And he might be the new GOAT. We might be having this conversation next year because nobody's ever done 3 in a row. So
we're going to have one of those pods about that. And I'm glad you did bring that up, but that's a future pod down here in the next couple of weeks because Absolutely. I think there is now doubt for all the people that Brady people that were saying beforehand that there's no way. He's inching up there, man. He's got an impressive resume. And guess what, buddy? He's not much older than our kids. So,
I know. I've coached. My sons have played against teams his father coached. I mean, no, absolutely not. And those same people were saying that Brady was lucky to be part of the Belichick system, which I beg to differ and always said for years, no, it was the Brady system. Belichick was lucky to be a part of.
Absolutely. There's a lot to that. And I mean, he made more this year out of less for sure. Because I mean, we all were there Christmas Day watching the Raiders hand the Chiefs their asses on TV Christmas morning. And we kept saying that the Chiefs dynasty was over. 8 weeks later, there's a lot of crow to eat. There's a lot. But hey, guys, we do appreciate you guys listening to us. Please check us out on our Twitter handle. That's balls with a capital B, TOTHE, capital WALL, capital P. And catch us on Rumble, Facebook, and Instagram. Please subscribe to us, man. We really appreciate it. Drop us a line. Let us know if there's anything you would like to talk about. We do not talk politics. We talk sports. Yes, we are baseball intensive because we got Billy Martin Jr. over here. Of course, we're going to talk a little baseball. And guess what? We're going to talk about the Hall of Fame inductees that came on 2 weeks ago today. And we're going to share we won't talk a lot about the inductees. It's kind of been already old hat there. But we do want to talk about the managerial inductee that came in also with the Veterans Committee. So we'll get to that. That'll be the bulk of our talk today. But Billy, let's open the floor a little bit here to you. I know you're very partial to this guy. He got 95.1% on the first ballot here. It's a Texas Ranger. He's Boston. He's Seattle. Adrian Beltre, we kind of talked a little off camera about, man, the latter part of his career, he was better than he was probably the first 7 years of his career. So, you know, it's amazing to me how that guy could be such a good player for a long period of time and not have the downfall that most Hall of Famers do their last couple of years.
You know, Kenny, I really think he was such a happy-go-lucky guy. He was just so much fun to be around. Everybody loved him in the clubhouse, loved him in the dugout. He was just so gifted, kind of like a Mickey Mantle almost, that he never had to work at it. And so as he got older and wiser, he just got better. And man, I wish that guy would have played another 3 years, another 4 years. He was so damn good defensively at third base. Can we not move him across the diamond and get him some reps over there and keep that bat in the lineup, or stick him at DH? I mean, give him another 3 or 4 years. What would he have done just as a bat? I mean, he'd have had 600 home runs easy, and who knows?
Well, and he also played flawless third base, never wearing a cup. I mean, how do you play third base not wearing a cup? Are you that sure of
Yeah,
your hands? I mean, that's
yeah,
crazy to me.
that's one way of looking at that, right?
But I mean, he's got
Wow.
477 home runs, and that was something that I found out when I was doing some research for the show. That's third place on the third baseman list behind Mike Schmidt and Eddie Matthews. So I mean, to me, he should have been a first ballot. I want to know who that 4.9% that didn't vote him first ballot. I'd like to know what the reasoning was and how you could tell me that there was 10 better picks than Adrian Beltre this time. I said, if you didn't want to pick him one, that's fine, but you should have been 8, 10, 9. He should have been on your ballot. To leave him off your ballot, I think that that's something that's another pod for another day, but that is ridiculous to me. But yeah, I mean, he's a phenomenal spirit, and just don't touch his head, Billy. He was not a fan of people touching his head.
No, oh no. And think how much he put up with Elvis Andrus, always doing that to him. And it absolutely drove him crazy. But that's the kind of teammate he was. He just dealt with it.
It was really fun to watch. My second guy we're going to talk about is Todd.
I was really bummed. I was bummed that Billy Wagner didn't get in.
Yeah, I was going to get to that. I was going to get to that. We're going to talk about I wanted to talk about just the other two. We'll get to that for sure because I've got an opinion also on one of those guys that didn't get in. Todd Helton. I know that his splits between Coors Field and and sea level were they're a little different. You're going to get some base hits in Coors Field because of the depth of the outfield plays that you wouldn't get at sea level sometimes. I thought he was a really, really, really good player. I'm not sure if to me, is a Hall of Famer. I never looked at Todd Helton as being the best player in the league or one of the top 2 or 3 in any given year. I mean, you could probably say a couple of years he's probably top 5 player. Sure, absolutely. But I always thought the heart and soul of that team was Larry Walker, not Todd Helton. I never associated it that way with me. And I hate saying this because I really liked him as a player. He played every day. He made himself a really good defensive first baseman. He's got a lot of hits, got over 2,700 hits. But the splits are there. I mean, I think he hit 140 home runs on the road. He batted 280 something on the road. I mean, that's not terrible. Don't get me wrong. I feel like I'm splitting hairs, and I'm not really trying to bring Todd Helton down. That's not the reasoning behind it. I'm just a little harder on the Hall of Fame, and I just don't think that he is Eddie Murray.
No, I totally understand where you're going here because, in your opinion, in my opinion, the Hall of Fame is the elite. I think every Hall of Famer has to bring so many things to the table. I mean, you have to have the accumulation of numbers,
Sure.
but there has to be a good solid half decade where you're the best at your position in the league.
Yeah.
Where if anybody says who's the best first baseman in the National League, they say Todd Helton. Now that's a tough position.
Yeah,
it really is to say that, but
Albert Pujols.
I'm sorry, that's part of it.
He played with Albert Pujols. I mean, so it's tough. I mean, he was never going to be the best.
Absolutely.
I mean, I just, when I look at Albert Pujols, I know Hall of Famer right away. When I look at Todd Helton, I've got to go to a reference book and start looking at numbers. And if I have to go start looking at numbers, that should tell me right then and there that that's probably not a Hall of Famer. That's just
the reason you're asking those questions. I mean, like, to me, the best first baseman not in the Hall of Fame is Don Mattingly, who because of his back
years. He had 4 great
because of his back injury, right? Because of his back injury, he couldn't play the years.
But
for who was better than him in his prime?
He's arguably the best player in baseball.
Maybe 6.
I mean,
Maybe 6. I mean, it's
I,
crazy. Yeah.
I don't. I mean, I get why maybe people leave Don Mattingly. I think Don Mattingly will get rectified on the Veterans Committee one day down the road because if Harold Baines can get into this Hall of Fame, I know Don Mattingly can get into this Hall of Fame. So I think that
I
will
hope
get
you're right.
corrected. I really do. I think Richie Allen's also in that same category. I think he will finally get into the Hall of Fame by that Veterans Committee. I mean, that's the one thing I like about the Veterans Committee. They're kind of making up for some of these omissions of guys that probably should have gotten a lot more. But the one thing I'll ask this at the end, Billy. I'm starting to hear a whole lot of this analytical stuff going into the numbers of the guys in the past. And I'm getting tired of hearing that as a benchmark one way or another because it just was hard. Just look at the baseball card. That's all we need. It doesn't say war on the back of the baseball card. It just gives you stats.
Nope.
You know? But let's see. I'm just saying I had a little bit of an issue of Todd Hilton being in there because I just think it's just a smidge underneath is what I think he was. Just a smidge. I think he can open the door, but he can never come in. That's what I always thought. But I will go to Joe Mauer real quick. You know, I was kind of one of those guys on the fence with him, but, you know, after going before the election came out, I went and looked at his numbers and started realizing he's got some black points that make it that way. I mean, he's a 3-time batting champion. That's significant in the catcher's role. You know, he's got a lifetime 308 batting average. I mean, yeah, he didn't have a whole lot of power per se when he got moved to first base because of the injuries, because of the concussion. But still, that guy put the ball in play pretty hard, awful lot in consistency for about 8 to 9 years. Also, he's one of those guys that, you know, #1 draft pick, goes to Minnesota, ends his career in Minnesota. To me, that also has something on that too, on your ledger. And is another guy that, kind of like Adrian Beltre, nobody ever said a bad thing about the guy. All he did was go out and play baseball when he was healthy. I think he's in.
No,
I really do. I came around on that.
Yeah, I'm absolutely on the same page with you there. That guy too, that position is so freaking hard on you. And
in the Metrodome.
And yeah, but the concussions. Think about that. What can you do about concussions? I mean, there's nothing. There's no workout
and we weren't addressing
right. There's no toughness
the way we are now. I mean, it was kind of shake this concussion off and come back and play maybe in a day or two. It's not it wasn't getting the attention that it's getting now, dude. No.
No. Where do you think all those yogiisms came from? I mean, come on, that's where yogiisms came from. Those were concussionisms.
With those face masks he was having, those foul tips that were coming back on a consistent basis too, and it wasn't just collisions; it was foul balls hitting his grill all the time, buddy. But yeah, I think Joe Mauer was a class act. Highly sport guy. He was a great quarterback. Was going to go to Florida State as a quarterback. Bobby Bowden, giving him an offer. Class act all the way around. I mean, and he played in the Metrodome. God bless his soul. Being a catcher in the Metrodome, I can't imagine that being an easy task with that turf field that he was on for all those years. God bless his soul. Hopefully he can stay upright for the next 40 years. Because, man, he took some bruises. Well, this is the part I wanted to kind of get to, and I think this is interesting, is the two guys that didn't get in that were in the 70 percentile. And the first one is going to be Billy Wagner. I can't remember. Is this his 3rd or the 4th year that's being on the ballot now? It's somewhere in that range. I just can't remember exactly. I mean, he was an absolute pistol. He was a hell of a closer for a number of years. I mean, 5'4" of them and about 168 pounds of them, and I think 100 pounds of it was in his thighs. The way he was built. I mean, but he was during an era where Houston kind of came back to, prominence with Biggio and Bagwell. He was part of that group. I mean, he was a tremendous regular season closer. The only thing that I have a problem with is, man, his postseason stats are flat out awful. He's got a 10 point something ERA. He blew saves, he blew opportunities. I think that kind of held him back a little bit because I'm not sure. And I hate when they play this numbers game, and I can maybe be offline here, but it seems like sometimes the Hall of Fame doesn't want too many people in the same year, and it seems like, okay, well, we got 4 already in. Hey, we got next year. Next
Absolutely.
year's deal doesn't look as good, so we'll get him next time. I think that good old boy syndrome plays, politics plays a little bit in that. I know that Billy Wagner will get in. I don't have a problem getting out because I think that the closers are undervalued in the Hall of Fame anyway. And if Trevor Hoffman is in the Hall of Fame, Billy Wagner needs to be in the Hall of Fame. If Lee Smith is in the Hall
Yes,
of Fame,
sir.
Billy Wagner needs the Hall of Fame.
Absolutely. And something people don't take into account just how hard it is to be a closer. Every client I get involved with, I talk to about trying to have the mentality of a closer, because when you screw up, you lose the game. If you've got to go sit in the dugout next to that starting pitcher who just went 7 2/3 and gave you everything he had, and everybody else in there's looking at you, and you got to wear it and live with it until you get that next opportunity to clean it up. And how good does that build you up for your next one? It is the toughest mental position, I think, in all of sports. And
it could be. It could be.
Man,
well,
you ask any scout in baseball.
Go ahead.
Well, the 3 hardest things to find in the game are a true ace, a true number 1 starter, not just everybody's number 1, to find that freaking Gibson, Maddox,
the Haas,
total badass, right? A true closer and a real leadoff hitter. Those are the 3 hardest things to find in the game. And, try to name 6 or 7 at either position, and you'll get stuck almost every year. And even when you think you've got one, 2 years later, he's not, because closers mentally can't handle it. And Billy was 5'10", and he just kept figuring out ways to throw harder and harder and harder his whole career. And I think he belongs. I'm biased. I love him as a person. He's such a good dude. And what are you gonna say?
Yeah, I think he's definitely in next year with the class the way it's coming in next year. I think he will get in for sure. The next person I want to talk about that I think that a lot of people spoke about is Gary Sheffield getting in. Here's a guy that's got over 500 home runs. The reason why he's not in the Hall of Fame because he was in the Balco report. Now, being in the Balco report does not mean that you were guilty of anything, but he was associated in the book in the report that he had the shaving cream. I want to know him being the godson of Barry Bonds is another reason why writers kind of said maybe we're not going to vote you in anyway because of the suspicion of Barry Bonds, obviously, and Gary Sheffield hooking that up to between the two. Now, you remember, Billy, his rookie year, this first couple of years in the league, Gary Sheffield was a horrific fielder. Yeah, I mean, he couldn't throw the ball to first base to save his life, back then. But he was always a feared hitter. I mean, there was never a time in his career that he was not a feared hitter. That doesn't mean he won batting titles. Doesn't mean that he won home run titles. He hit 50 home runs a couple times, I believe. But for over a decade in my watching baseball, that was one of the best hitters in the game of baseball, period. It doesn't matter what you had to say about it. Power, average, whatever you want to do. I just think that the link to the Balco and maybe the Barry Bonds a little bit is the reason why he's not in. And unfortunately, he's off the ballot now. This was his 10th and last year on the ballot, so he's going to have to be a veteran spinny guy. maybe in 10 years
Yep.
from now, those guys
Yeah.
are a little softer on the steroid era. But man, let me tell you, man, that guy was clutch too. I sure like watching him play. Yeah, he squeezed that thing.
I do too. I did too. The only thing he did wrong, the biggest mistake he made was being his own agent. He he cost himself millions being
Yeah.
his own agent and didn't get himself a no trade clause. And that cost him with the Yankees, but I agree. For me he was Hall of Famer too.
Yeah, he was also a guy that was also kind of hard to deal with. You know, he wasn't a coach's. He wasn't a Skip's favorite at times. His disposition could kind of rub people the wrong way at times. You know, he was a little rough on the edges sometimes, and I wonder if some of those writers held that back against him for that. You know, I mean, you know, I'm not. I don't want to say they are, and I'm not trying to attack their integrity, but it still just seems like to me, if you just look at the stats and the eyeball test, how is he not in? And
I
Big
agree.
Pop was in who did fail a test. For suspicion is one thing. You know, but if you got a clean, if you got a dirty test, that is pretty sound. That tells me you cheated. You're holding back a guy's livelihood on suspicion, and that to me is not right. It really isn't. But finally, the good. We're going to talk about Jim Leland getting in, and I know this is very close to you at home with your dad being a Skip all these years. He's 15th all time on the win list with 1769 wins. His winning percentage, though, of all the Hall of Famers, is the lowest. He's at 40. Oh, he's at 51%. He's one of the lowest at 51%. Now, baseball is, you know, excellent to me is about 54, 53, 54% if you can win in your games as Skip. Because there's going to be some years you're going to get just really run down where you may be 15, 16 games under 500. You've got to try to, you know, win those games back up on the plus side, which is a lot harder to do. You know, you might have to sprinkle in a 100 win season to offset some of those. So it's really tough. But the reason I want to say this is this, because these are the winning percentages of the Hall of Fame coaches. Well, a couple of them are not there just yet, but they will be. Whitey Herzog is at 53%, one ring. Dick Williams is at 52%, two rings. You know, I give him that. And he took the Red Sox to the World Series, 2 in 67. Not a small feat. La Russa, these are kind of some guys more of your era here. La Russa's at 53%. Joe Torre's at 54%. Bobby Cox came in at second highest at 56%, which I thought was pretty good. That's a long stretch for him. You know, it's not just a 10-year stretch for Bobby Cox. That's a long stretch. Mike Sosier's at 54%. Bruce Bochy's at 49%. He's not a Hall of Famer yet, but he will be. Mike Sosier's at 54%. Now, this is one that's not in the Hall of Fame yet that I didn't realize he had such a high percentage, and that's Davey Johnson at 56%. I didn't know he won 56 of his games. Yes, he's got 56% of his games he won. That's ahead of La Russa. The number one in the clubhouse is Earl Weaver. He's at 58% of his games. Now that's a long stretch. I believe he was 66 was his first year, or 65, right after Ralph Hawkey won it. You know, prior to that with Baltimore against the Dodgers, and he went to what 82, and then stayed out of 80, close to 80, stayed out a couple years, and came back after the Orioles won it in 82 for a couple years. So that's a long stretch for, you know, being at 58% clip. Sparky's at 55%, but these two here I really thought you'd like. Walter Alston, he's at 56%. And that's a long 56% for a guy. I mean, you know, think about it. Coaching mid 50s for Brooklyn all the way up to the early 70s for the Dodgers, made the move over. He won in Brooklyn. He won several times in Dodger land. They were always competitive in LA. And the next one I got here is Casey Stengel. We kind of talked a little bit off the camera with him. Now, Casey Stengel's got a 51% winning percentage. And what kills that percentage for him, he was an expansion manager of the Mets for almost 4 years. Almost 4 years. Close to 4 years. And he was 175 and 404 as a Mets manager. So just think if he went 500, how much better that percentage would have been for him. If he just went 500.
Oh,
You know, he would have. I mean, he'd probably be in the mid 50s. Then Terry Francona, we think, is a Hall of Fame coach, right? And he's at 52%. The reason I say all this is Billy Martin. Yes, you might know this guy. He's at 55% of his games if he's won. He's got a world championship. But we have no voting of Billy Martin Sr. on the Hall of Fame. I've said this before and I'll say it again. It is a travesty. It's a travesty. I would say this if I was having another pod with somebody else. It's a travesty that he's not on there. If you tell me that antics, Earl Weaver had just as many antics as your father did, maybe not as much fist fights, but his antics on the field were just as much there as Earl Weaver. Now, Earl Weaver's got one championship. A lot of people think Earl Weaver has multiple championships. He has one. Ralph Hawk won the one in the mid 60s, and Alan, was it Alter Bearer? He's the one that won it in 82. Earl Weaver didn't. So anyhow, I was really thought that was interesting. Not to slide on Jim Leyland. I mean, I know he's got 15th place all time. You know, he's won multiple championships. Expansion team manager. I get that. He was an old school manager. I could be talked into that. But the only reason I can be talked into that is because Billy Martin Sr. is already in. So anyway, I want you to talk about Jim Leyland a little bit. I know you've had some dealings with Jim Leyland in the past, and I know that I know you've had Terry Francona, some guys I know that you spoke highly of before. You know, Whitey Herzog. So give me kind of an estimate what you think of those guys, and compare them maybe to your dad a little bit.
I loved Leland as a manager, and I know so many backstories about him because of Rich Donnelly. His third base coach was a good friend of mine, and
Rangers. Oh, wow.
You know, it's funny. Jim's really been good to me over the years. Whenever I'd see, he's such a chain smoker, right? That whenever I'd see him anywhere, if I wanted to talk to him, I wouldn't go bug him while he's sitting talking to the group he was with. I would just go outside to the first available place a smoker can go and wait, because I wouldn't have to wait longer than 15 minutes, and he'd show up and I'd get to talk to him and say hi and catch up. But no, that guy, he handled celebrities. He handled the big guys well. He handled the Bonzes, the superstars well. He made the players you didn't know about better. I really think he belongs. And yeah, no, when you talk about Dad not being in, and I know you're right, I'm not supposed to say a lot of stuff about this. I got to be careful there, but
I'll do that.
I think Whitey Herzog's a great comp for Dad to prove why he should be in. And I believe Whitey should be in, because I always felt like he was a Hall of Fame manager when he was managing. He and my father managed the same team, the Texas Rangers. Whitey, as manager, had that 73 team that lost 108 games. My father took the same team the next year, and they almost went to the postseason. They drew their first million fans, and a lot of people don't know this either. That team was for sale. That was the whole reason Bob Short fired Whitey Herzog to hire my father, because he knew my father always improved attendance. And his funny tagline was, when Randy Galloway said to him, "You're firing a pretty good manager to hire this guy," he said, "Well, I'd fire my mother to hire Billy Martin." And anyways, that 74 team, people don't know that team was for sale. The only two buyers were a guy in Seattle and a group in Denver. And Bob Short didn't want to be the jerk to sell the Texas Rangers to another state. So that 74 season blew him up, and Brad Corbett, a Fort Worth pipe man, bought the team, and the team stayed here. We'd have gotten another team in the Metroplex, but it would probably be in Dallas.
Yeah.
Because Arlington wouldn't have worked.
No.
And so I take a lot of pride that Dad kept the team right here. But not only did he and Whitey manage the same team, Kenny, but they managed against each other in the postseason 2 years in a row with Kansas City and New York. And who won those?
And some highly contested I believe it was 4 years in a row they played. 4 out of 5. Excuse me, 4 out of 5. 4 out of 5. Because 79.
They were great games.
Yeah, they were great. I mean, just unbelievable drama for 5-game sets. For 5 games, 5-game series. They were unbelievable. And I mean, the Kansas City Royals are a hair from being historical for that era because, the heroics of Chris Chambliss, and, 1 year, the heroics of Reggie Jackson 1 year at at their place in the 5th game. I mean, if you just win one of those, it might be different. But it's just. Oh, I think you froze up. Okay, there you are. I think that I'm not going to say that there's going to be some people that are just not going to like your father. I get that part of it, but to me, and I think this has a lot to do with voting in particular, like MVP and all that other kind of stuff. If you're not going to take the position of your vote serious, then that vote needs to be taken away from you. Because it shouldn't be any bias. It shouldn't be any innuendos. It shouldn't be any, well, maybe he did this. You can't vote that way. If it's proven somebody did steroids and your hard stance is against that is about he hadn't do it, I support your vote all the way around. But to leave people off ballots to their, first ballot people, I don't understand it. And I don't know where the accountability comes from. That's to me is the problem. It seems like there's no accountability because year after year we're talking about this. And it makes no sense to me at all that Joe DiMaggio was not a 100% voter on the ballot. It makes zero sense to me. It makes zero sense to me that Hank Aaron was not a first ballot 100% on everybody's ballot. Willie Mays. Now,
absolutely.
I know that was back in the day. I understand that was back in the day. But how in the hell do you leave Adrian Beltre off of your list? It makes no sense. And so I want accountability. And I've thought about your dad, about disservices to people that didn't get through. There's another guy, and that's probably for another pod. And you and I talked about this on the phone. Dave Parker. You can make a case for Dave Parker being in the Hall of Fame, but he's not on the ballot anymore. He didn't get enough votes for that. So now he has to wait for this Veterans Committee. And we all know that Dave Parker's got bad health. I believe he's got ALS right now. Or MS. I can't remember which one it is. So they may vote him in 15 years from now, but he's not going to be here probably to accept that. That's what I don't get. The hypocrisy of it all, Billy. I just gets under my nerves.
No, I couldn't agree with you more, Kenny. I know things that were said about my father in some of those veteran committees. I knew somebody that was in there, and I also got to read the paragraph that was written about him for each committee member, which I still don't understand that. Why would somebody write a paragraph about each person? If these people are on that committee, they should know all about that person. You and I have day jobs, and yet we do our research and we study this stuff. And I read this, but it was his off the field issues, blah, blah, blah. And I read this whole thing and I went, who wrote that? How about we talk about the fact that his winning percentage is better than 11 of the managers already in the Hall of Fame. How about we talk about the fact that he won with good teams and bad teams?
Turned around team.
There were so many things.
The Tiger team was not very good before he got there.
It was the oldest team in baseball. It was the oldest team in baseball. And Al Kaline was on the committee one year and said he really just wasn't fun to play for. So maybe Alden winning was fun. I don't know. But that was his knock on Dad, that he wasn't fun to play for.
He saved the Oakland A's organization in 1980 when he went there. There, literally, Oakland was Oakland of today in 1978 and 79 when Stoneman was there, was the owner over there. They were, I mean, whoever took over after Finley. I mean, it was a dumpster fire out there.
Well, no, it was Finley that hired him.
Okay.
Finley hired him
because
he was, the team was for sale, right? He just got through a bad divorce and the team was for sale again. Another happens again. And Finley, by the way, Finley should also be in the Hall of Fame. Finley not only was one of the greatest owners ever, he was basically the general manager, and the man won 3 World Series in a row, being the cheapest owner there was. When he hired my father was hired as manager and general manager because he knew Finley, would take over that stuff. And so he made sure that was part of the deal. But I'll tell you something about that guy, man. He was so innovative. When my father was hired, there were only 4 or 6 scouts on the staff. The first move my father did as manager GM was hire a bunch of scouts, right? Well, ironically, the paper, of course, said Martin hires a bunch of his drinking buddies to work with the Oakland A's. Well, maybe they were his drinking buddies because they were baseball men. And that group of scouts did such a good job that they produced 3 Rookie of the Years in a row in the major leagues in Canseco, McGuire, and Walt Weiss. Those were all drafted by scouts my father hired,
not bad,
which was the first move he did as Oakland A, which is another reason why I don't care about all this. We can talk about all the analytics you want, and which I love, and it's very interesting, but you still have to see it. You still have to be old school to make it all mesh together.
Got to look at the back of the baseball card every now
and then. That's right.
Well, I just want to say, great talking with you again on this pod here, Billy. It's been nothing but pleasure. I want to get back to doing this again. I enjoy talking baseball shop, especially talking about Billy Ball out in Oakland. We got to talk about those Oakland days a little bit, That's going to be real interesting. Now, God bless your father for one thing. How many people can say they were the skipper under George Steinbrenner and Charlie O? Not many. Not many.
Nope.
Not many that were able to walk away alive afterwards. That's
well,
right.
And you know what? George belongs in the Hall of Fame too. And as angry as he made people or whatever, as wrong as he was firing my father 5 times, people say I should hate him, Kenny, right? Because he fired my father so many times. Guess what? He hired him the exact same amount, and
said he was a Yankee.
And they had a true love-hate relationship.
Yes, absolutely.
Think about he almost bought the Cleveland Browns right before he bought the Yankees.
Yes. Well, would that have changed?
We could do another podcast on. Yeah, George was a college football coach. He coached at Purdue and Northwestern. Look how he meddled in baseball, the sport he didn't know about. Think what he'd have done in football. He'd have made Jerry Jones look like an absentee owner.
Oh boy, he would have had talk. He would have had his own show back in 1959, or excuse me, 69. He would have had his own show, but he just bought the Yankees from CBS for a small couple million. No biggie. No big deal, dude. That's huge, man. That's huge.
8.8 million, and used $155,000 of his own money.
Unreal.
That's less than we probably paid for our house.
And do you think Hal even recognizes what the net worth for the Yankees is right now to what his dad bought him for 50 years ago? Gosh. Oh, how did Jerry Jones ask? Oh, there's one side note I want to say before we leave. Check Ralph Hawk's stats. Hawk. He's got 2 championships too. Check him as a manager. Not bad. He won't make the Hall of Fame, but not bad. They're not bad. It was kind of eye-opening to me. It's kind of eye-opening to me. So anyway, we do appreciate you guys being with us. Please check us out on Twitter, Balls to the Wall. That's capital BTOTHE, capital WALLP as in Paul. Check us out on Rumble, Facebook, and Instagram. Please subscribe and like. Tell us what you like, what you dislike. We appreciate you guys listening. We'll take you guys next week. Hope to see you around soon. Thanks so much, Billy. I appreciate it, man. Love it.
Kenny, always pleasure, my friend.
Always.